So there's some misconception about turning fat into muscle. In this video, I'm going to give you some clarification on the situation. So let's do this. Before we go any further, if you're new to the channel, I'm Jordan Vassiliou and I mainly make fitness, travel and self-development content. If this sounds like the channel for you, hit the subscribe button and we'll get into the rest of the video. So the fitness industry and social media sometimes simplifies complex physiological processes strictly for marketing.
What do you mean?
So phrases like turn muscle into fat might be used to suggest the idea of body transformation, even though the literal conversion from fat to muscle doesn't occur in the process. And it's also important to note the phrase turning muscle into fat can be a bit misleading. This is because muscle and fat are two different types of tissue with distinct characteristics. So fat cells store energy in the form of triglycerides, while muscle tissues is composed of muscle fibers that contract to produce movement. Before I go any further, I'm just going to give you a breakdown of what triglycerides are. So triglycerides are a type of fat that are found in your blood. So when you eat, your body converts any calories that don't need to be used right then into triglycerides, and the triglycerides are stored as fat cells. So I've got 10 points to provide you extra clarity on this situation, and I'm also going to take a deeper dive into one or two of the points I've just given you. As I stated previously, they're two complete different tissues. Fat tissue is primarily composed of adipocytes, while on the other hand, muscle tissues are composed of muscle fibers or myocytes. The next point is that they're fat cells versus muscle cells. Fat tissues are composed of fat cells, which are adipocytes, and they store the energy from the triglycerides. Whereas on the other hand, muscle tissue is composed of muscle cells, which are muscle fibers and myocytes, and these muscle cells contract to generate force and produce movement. And my next point is that they both have different functions. So fat tissue primarily serves as an energy storage depot, insulating the body and keeping you warm, and also protecting vital organs. Whereas muscle tissue, on the other hand, is quite the contrast. This is used to generate movement, and it's also used to support your bodily functions like your posture and your joint stability. My next point is that they both have different structures. Fat tissues are primarily made up of lipids, whereas muscle tissue is primarily composed of proteins, specifically myosin and actin, which are essential for muscle contraction. My next point is that there's no biological mechanism. So what I mean by this is that there's no psychological mechanism in the human body that can convert one type of tissue into another. For example, fat cannot spontaneously turn into muscle, and muscle cannot change into fat. So my next point is that they both use different metabolic processes. Fat loss occurs through a metabolic process such as lipolysis. So this involves a breakdown of stored fat into fatty acids and glycerol for energy use. And on the other hand, gaining muscle is from the process of protein synthesis, and this basically involves the process of creating new muscle fibers or enlarging existing ones. My next point is that both these processes work within different calorie intakes. That is a calorie deficit or a calorie surplus. So fat loss typically requires a calorie deficit, meaning that you consume less calories than you're burning, which leads to the body using stored fat as energy. Whereas gaining muscle, on the other hand, normally requires a calorie surplus, where you consume more calories than you expend, providing additional energy for muscle growth. So my next point is a matter of energy. The energy balance for fat loss and muscle growth is fundamentally different. So fat loss involves utilizing stored energy. So while muscle tissue requires a provision of excess energy for building and repair of muscle tissue. So my next point is genetics and hormones. So your genetics and your hormones play a massive part in terms of your body's fat distribution and also the potential of your muscle growth. So that these factors are very specific to an individual, they cannot be controlled or manipulated by converting one tissue to another. And my next point is that they're simultaneous processes. That's a mouthful. While you can't turn fat into muscle, it is possible to simultaneously lose fat and gain muscle. So losing fat and gaining muscles are two separate physiological processes, and both these separate processes could happen simultaneously for a structured fitness and nutritional program. So those are my 10 points to provide you clarity on turning muscle into fat. So in summary, fat and muscles are two distinct tissues with different properties, functions and metabolic processes. And understanding the fundamental difference between them both is really important in order for you to achieve your body composition goals. And those 10 points completely eliminates the myth that you could turn one into another, and instead you could work on losing body fat and gaining muscle through separate targeted approaches. But anyways, if you've made it to the end of this video, I really appreciate you. Don't forget to hit the thumbs up button if you found this video beneficial. Don't forget to follow me on Instagram. I'm very active on that platform and you can see what I'm up to on a day-to-day basis. And while you're at it, don't forget to hit the subscribe button, and hopefully I'll see you in the next video. So until next time, peace. Yeah. Listen.